Welcome back to the channel. Today, we explore the complex truths behind pivotal moments in world history. Today, we're examining one of the most consequential and misunderstood episodes in the early medieval world: the Arab conquests and the claim that Islam spread by the sword. This phrase, often used polemically, oversimplifies a multi-century phenomenon. In reality, the expansion of Islam involved military conquest, but also diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange. So how much of this spread was due to the sword, and how much was the result of deeper structural and spiritual forces? Before the Prophet Muhammad's emergence in the early 7th century, Arabia was a mosaic of tribal communities, largely pagan, but with strong Jewish and Christian influences. The Arabian Peninsula was politically fragmented, but strategically located between two great empires: the Byzantine Empire to the northwest and the Sassanid Empire to the northeast. Both were exhausted by decades of war. When Islam emerged in this geopolitical vacuum, it quickly found itself not only as a new religious movement, but also a unifying force for Arab tribes, many of whom had long been marginalized in imperial politics. Under Muhammad's leadership, disparate tribes were united under a single religious political vision: Islam is both faith and community. By the time of his death in 632 CE, most of the Arabian Peninsula had been brought under Muslim rule. What followed was not a brief spasm of conquest, but a remarkably sustained campaign of expansion, one that, within a century, would stretch from the Atlantic coast of North Africa to the frontiers of India and Central Asia. The military campaigns that followed are staggering in their scope and speed. Between 632 and 750 CE, the Rashidun and Umayyad caliphs orchestrated a series of rapid conquests. Damascus fell in 635, Jerusalem in 638, and Egypt by 642. The Sassanid Empire, already weakened, collapsed entirely after defeats at Qadisiyah and Nihawand. The reasons for these successes were multifaceted: disciplined Arab armies, religious motivation, internal dissent in Byzantine and Sassanid provinces, and surprisingly, a degree of local support in many areas, especially among Christians and Jews who resented imperial persecution. A critical misconception is that these conquests resulted in mass forced conversions, but historical evidence tells a more complex story. In most newly conquered regions, conversion to Islam was gradual, often taking centuries. Non-Muslims, particularly Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, were allowed to practice their faith under the dhimmi system, paying a tax known as jizya in exchange for protection. While certainly hierarchical and unequal, this arrangement suggests that early Muslim rulers were more interested in control and revenue than immediate religious uniformity. So, did Islam spread by the sword? In terms of territorial expansion, yes, the Arab conquests were fundamentally military in nature. But the spread of Islamic belief, culture, and civilization was not enforced at sword point on a mass scale. The sword enabled the creation of a Muslim political world, but conversion was driven by complex social incentives: access to elite networks, tax benefits, Arabic literacy, and cultural prestige. It's also important to remember that the early Islamic Empire was remarkably pluralistic compared to its contemporaries. The caliphs themselves were divided on how to handle religious diversity. The Umayyads, for instance, often discouraged mass conversion because it reduced the tax base. It wasn't until the Abbasid period, starting in 750, that we see more structured efforts to encourage Islamization alongside Arabization. Even then, conversion was often voluntary and motivated by opportunity rather than compulsion. Urban centers, especially, became hubs of Islamic culture and scholarship, not by decree, but through intellectual and economic dynamism. Resistance to Arab rule certainly existed. The Berbers in North Africa, the Khazars in the Caucasus, and various Byzantine remnants mounted fierce resistance. But accommodation was also common. Many local elites negotiated their positions within the new Islamic order. Greek-speaking Christians in Syria, Persian bureaucrats in Iran, and Coptic Christians in Egypt played significant roles in the administration of the caliphate. This illustrates that the conquests were not just military subjugation. They were also moments of negotiation, adaptation, and cooptation. Beyond the battlefield, Islam also spread through trade routes and spiritual movements. In sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia, Muslim merchants, mystics, and scholars played a critical role. Sufi brotherhoods were particularly effective at blending Islamic teachings with local customs. These forms of spread were peaceful, persuasive, and grounded in relationship building rather than conquest. The fact that places like Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country today, embraced Islam without military conquest underlies the diversity of Islam's expansion. The Arab conquests undeniably reshaped the political map of the ancient world, and they did so through military force. But the spread of Islam itself, its adoption by millions over time, was more complex, more gradual, and more nuanced than the phrase "spread by the sword" suggests. Like all empires, the early Islamic world was built through power, but it endured through persuasion, administration, and adaptability. Thank you for joining us. If you appreciated this nuanced look into the history of Islam's early expansion, please like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to check out our other deep dives into the histories that shaped our world.